What is the right way to play the Oddworld games in chronological order? A lot of you would obviously say Abe's Odyssey for PlayStation 1. But I would say no, not really, because Abe's Odyssey is not really the perfect first Oddworld game for someone new to Oddworld. Because the thing is, Abe's Odyssey is from 1997, around the time when video games used to be intentionally hard so that people would spend more time on the game itself due to hardware limitation. And you should also think that video games nowadays aren't as hard as they used to be back in the day. So for someone who is currently grown up in today's time of video games, Abe's Odyssey's difficulty would be frustrating for a newcomer in this timeline. And also, a lot of those people who suggest Abe's Odyssey as the first game are also those types of people who grow up in that timeline where video games used to be hard. So for them, it feels normal for them, that type of difficulty. And yeah, I am basically one of those people, but I would legit suggest that Odyssey should not be the first Oddworld game for a newcomer. So then you would think, oh, so it's new and tasty, that should be the best first Oddworld game. No, not new and tasty either, because if you just read the title correctly, this video is exactly about how would a newcomer be able to play the Oddworld games if they want to play it in chronological order, like based on the accurate timeline from the Oddworld lore itself. And this is here where I made a sort of complicated list of how you should play the Oddworld games in chronological order for a newcomer. So without wasting more time, let's get started. The first title in the timeline is Vykker's Lab DLC inside Oddworld Soulstorm. And yes, I know what you'll think. What? Why this title? Well, as the first title for a newcomer? Well, the thing is, based off this cinematic footage that we see at the end of the DLC, it's very likely that the Vykker's Lab DLC take place before the events of Oddworld New and Tasty, where we see the Vykkers and Glocken using the Modakan slaves to test the effects of the Soulstorm brew. But yeah, I know some of you would still be against this idea, but when you think about it, this is kind of like a good way to start the Oddworld games, as we could kind of call this for the prologue of this entire timeline. And also, this is kind of like a good start for the newcomer, because this is here where they already get introduced to the 2D gameplay mechanic, where they run, jump, climbing, pulling levers, solving puzzles, and avoiding bombs, and solving puzzles as well. All of this stuff. And also, this isn't really like a very long DLC level, as I think like the newcomer would spend like 30 minutes to 1 hour on this, so it's not gonna be that long. Oh yeah, and one more thing, you need to own Oddworld Soulstorm on Xbox to be able to play the Vykker's Lab DLC, since this is an Xbox exclusive content. Once the newcomer is done with Vykker's Lab DLC, the next one in the list is Oddworld New and Tasty. This is here where the true story begins, and where the newcomer gets introduced to the main protagonist himself, Abe. And once they begin the level, they would already be familiar with the gameplay itself, since they have already gone through this from the Vykker's Lab DLC. But it's also here where they will get introduced to some brand new gameplay features, such as chanting, throwing bombs and rocks, talking to other Mudokons, making them follow you, and saving them to a bird portal. Once the newcomer is done with New and Tasty, the next one in the list is Alpha's Escape. For this, the newcomer needs to at least own New and Tasty on either PS4, PS5, Nintendo Switch, Xbox One, Xbox Series S/X, PC, or Mac, because the rest of the other platforms where New and Tasty is available, Alpha's Escape DLC is not available there either. And this DLC, you experience like the continuation of New and Tasty, where Ape has to rescue Elf himself. And this single little detail will be a bit important later on in the timeline, just slightly. Once the newcomer is done with Alpha's Escape, the next one on the list they need to move on is Toby's Escape inside Oddworld Soulstorm. For this, they need to own Oddworld Soulstorm on either PC or PlayStation, since Toby's Escape is exclusive to these two platforms. Toby's Escape takes place right after the events of New and Tasty, where we see Rapture Farms exploding and going on fire on Toby's perspective, and where we also see himself trying to escape from Rapture Farm. Sure, the first cutscene might be confusing for the newcomers, but things will quickly make sense for the newcomers after that. But there will also be one little key detail that is going to be important for the newcomers to understand later on, especially the part when Toby mentions that he swiped the train manual from the shipping years ago, and where he used this to be able to drive a train, because this will be mentioned later on. Not only that, when the newcomer reaches Zulagwan in Toby's Escape, they will also recognize it from New and Tasty, where they're like, oh yeah, that one part from New and Tasty. Once the newcomer is done with Toby's Escape, the next one in the list is Oddworld Soulstorm itself. And I mean, yeah, the main game itself. This is here where they get to continue the story through Ape's perspective again. When they reach the part where Ape meets Elf and Toby, the newcomers will easily understand Toby's personality with how he is able to drive a train, and also the part where an Elf mentions that he swiped the manuals out of shipping years ago, because this was mentioned in Toby's Escape. And that's literally it. That's the whole list for the new Oddworld Quintology. Now after this is here where I would now recommend the newcomers to try out Ape's Odyssey on either PS1 or PC, to get a glimpse on how the old Quintology was supposed to be. And I also think, like, when they try out Ape's Odyssey, I think it's also here where they have been warmed up enough from playing through all of these games from the new Quintology. In Ape's Odyssey, they will basically experience the exact same story as seen in New and Tasty, but in a different shape or form. Once the newcomer is done with Ape's Odyssey, they move on to Ape's Exodus. This is here where they will experience pretty much the same story as seen in Oddworld Soulstorm, but where things are scrambled all around the whole game. They will also see a bunch of familiar places as seen in Oddworld Soulstorm, such as Necromines, Vykker Depot, Slick Barracks, and Soulstorm Brewery. But it's also here where they will see some brand new places, such as Necrom, Mudomo Vault, Mudanchi Vaults, and Boneworks. After Exodus is Munch's Odyssey. This is here where the newcomers will move on from playing a bunch of 2D games to a 3D game, where they also get introduced to the brand new gameplay mechanic in 3D. It's also here where they will get introduced to Munch himself for the very first time, and also here where they will get to see the Vykkers again and also get a much better understanding of their personality in general. And yeah, that was literally it for the list of the all Quintology. So here's basically my entire list that I have covered up throughout this whole video. Oh yeah, and there's also Oddworld Stranger's Wrath. But this game is more of a game of its own. It doesn't really matter if you play this at the start or in the middle or the end. It's entirely up to you when you want to play this. So that is my recommended list of playing the Oddworld games in chronological order. So I'm honestly very curious to hear about what you think about my list here. So without anything else to say, thanks a lot for watching this video, and I'll see you all next time. Bye bye.